Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
The House is poised to pass Sunday liquor sales, but will the Senate? We'll ask the Senate bill's sponsor. We'll also take a closer look at the educational topics of teacher licensing and the increasing diversity in Minnesota schools. Stay tuned for this and more on this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Lurkey. A bill that would allow alcohol sales on Sunday, a prohibition that's been on the books for more than 150 years, is moving through the House and may be taken up in the Senate. Joining me in the studio to talk about Sunday liquor sales is Senator David Osmek. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Minnesota liquor laws have been eased over the years, including now you can get growlers of beer on Sundays. How confident are you that 2017 is the year for Sunday liquor sales?
I'm pretty optimistic. The changes in the state Senate, of course, the Republicans are now in the majority. We had a lot of no votes turn into yes votes. We had a lot of outstate DFLers that were beholden to other interests and not maybe listening necessarily to the people, because, I mean, from my email and from my phone calls, it's at least 4 or 5, 6 to 1, yes, we would like this. It's a consumer-driven effort, and if you remember back, I've been the guy for 4 years trying to get growlers on Sundays, getting better growler laws so that these small craft breweries can flourish, and they really are in Minnesota. It's providing lots of good jobs and lots of small business opportunities. So I'm very optimistic that we've got the votes. You never know until you get the actual vote, but I'm pretty optimistic.
In past years, opponents of Sunday liquor sales argued that if allowed, liquor sales would be spreading 6 days of sales over 7 days, and then they're losing a day off. How do you respond to those concerns?
I don't necessarily believe that to be true. I believe if a business has an additional day to sell their products, I think you're going to find at least a marginal increase in the amount of product that's actually sold. There's a lot of times where you'll have guests in from out of state or last-minute guests that you want to have a bottle of wine or you want to have something for your guests, and it's a Sunday and you can't buy it. Well, that's a lost opportunity because they're not going to buy it the next day. I think you'll find out, like in Colorado, they opened it up. They used to have the ban on Sunday sales. They opened it up, and my understanding is that their sales went up and their tax revenue went up. So I think that the argument is rather false. I understand that some of these businesses don't want to be open, but there are some that do. So I think they should have the opportunity to make the choice themselves at a business level.
Is Sunday liquor sales about offering flexibility to the consumer or assisting those liquor stores that are open in the border cities where they're losing business because people will cross the border on Sundays to purchase alcohol, or is it both?
It's both. It really is. It's an opportunity for businesses, and really what you've said is really accurate, is that those businesses that are right within 20 miles are suffering every Sunday because it's a fact. The liquor stores in Hudson, Wisconsin have to staff up on Sundays because they have people coming across the border on Sundays. So it's a fact of life, and those businesses are asking for this. But more importantly, I don't think that government should be writing in statute a day off for one specific segment of our society. Why should they have a legislative day off mandated by the state of Minnesota when no gas stations, grocery stores, all of those are open? And I used to go to Moorhead State a long time ago, and I worked at a grocery store in Moorhead. And at that time in Fargo, North Dakota did not allow grocery stores to be open on Sundays. We staffed up on Sundays. We were very busy on the Moorhead side of the border. Well, guess what? After a certain length of time, North Dakota finally figured out, let's just be open on Sunday. The same rule applies.
John Schroeder of Larry's Liquor in Owatonna expressed concern about the Sunday liquor sales in their local paper. He said, quote, "The expenses get bigger. You have to hire someone to be here. Workman's comp goes up, utilities go up, general expenses go up." So are Sunday liquor sales fair to that small liquor store owner whose business expenses will increase, though their revenue may not increase?
Well, the first answer I have is then if you as a business owner know that this is something that's not going to be profitable, then why don't you make the choice to be closed on Sundays? Second, last time I checked, You don't have an exemption on your property taxes on Sundays. You will have some marginal utility increases, absolutely. But do you turn off your coolers on Sundays and your freezers on Sundays? No, you don't. Are there going to be? I've looked at my local liquor stores, and most times they got quite a few lights on. So there's a lot of utilities that they're still expending on Sundays. But more importantly, why don't you as a business owner come up with your own labor model? Instead of being open at 9 o'clock in the morning weekdays, why don't you change that to 10 o'clock? Or if you're saying to the government that, well, you're going to spread that sales from Saturday over to Sunday, well, that means you don't need as many people on staff on Saturday, right? See, don't make me come and talk to you about your business model and your labor model. You can figure this out. You're smart. And I trust businesses to make the right decision, not government. That's where this all is.
Is it your intent to leave the decision to the local municipalities? What exactly, you have two bills. What exactly do those bills do?
Right. One of them is wide open, that it treats Sunday just like every other day of the week. The other option that I have on the table is that it's called local opt-out, that local jurisdictions can, by ordinance, opt out. And technically right now, they can make an ordinance right now that opts out from Saturdays. Let's say they don't want to have their municipal open on Saturdays. Well, they can certainly close because municipals have that control. So there are other other changes that may be coming in forms of amendments. There may be a distribution that you cannot distribute on Sundays. But every option is on the table. What I want people to do is come to the table and say, listen, why are we treating one tiny sliver of our businesses in Minnesota differently than others, the vast majority of Minnesota businesses? Let them make the decision on their own.
And one last question before we go. Some opponents contend that Sunday liquor sales will increase alcohol abuse in our society. What do you say to that concern?
I don't necessarily totally agree. I understand that you would have more access. That's true. Right now, for my lifetime and years, we have followed former Senator Rod Skoye's direction of just stock up on Saturdays. Well, I don't necessarily see that as a big change. Also, restaurants and bars are open on Sundays. There's plenty of access there. You can get 3-2 right now on sale. Granted, it's not strong beer, and the hard liquor is not available for off sale. We understand that. So I think the open opportunities are still there for the same problem to exist. I just think that it just needs to be something we move into the 21st century on, and letting those businesses make those decisions, especially those small businesses on the border.
Senator Osmek, I want to thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing what the Senate will do.
Thank you. I'm very optimistic, and we'll see if this is the year.
A coalition of Somali American leaders invited lawmakers to a conference room at the Capitol to share a traditional meal of sambucas and sweet tea in an effort to raise awareness for Somali-run nonprofit programs.
They don't know us. They hear about the Somali community, and they hear about ISIS, or they hear about oppressed women, or they hear about all the stereotypes. What we're saying is we're contributors to our state. We're here. We're not going anywhere. We're so driven that we want to help ourselves, and we don't want handouts. What we want is investment out of the tax money that would actually contribute to the state. So no, not someone else's tax, but the money we give in. So our goal today is to get to know the legislators, introduce ourselves, and build bridges.
We are neighbors, number one. Number two is we want to stand for each other because we're all Minnesotans.
The Somali community is part of our community, and we need to understand that, and we need to bring people together so that they can progress and become part of our society, and we can understand their culture. So this is a perfect place for that to start.
Last March, the Legislative Auditor's Report called Minnesota's teacher licensure system broken. Minnesota is also experiencing a teacher shortage. Senator Greg Clausen was a member of the bipartisan study group on educator licensure that met throughout the summer, and a longtime school administrator. He now joins me in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
One of the items pointed out by the Legislative Auditor's Report was that teacher licensure has been reporting to both the Board of Teaching and the Department of Education, which has created a lot of confusion. Which department do you think would best handle the situation?
Well, the governance issue is one of the main controversial points in the whole teacher licensing program in Minnesota. We found there were a lot of problems of having two entities involved in the process. I think if you look at other licensing boards in the state of Minnesota, many of them have people that are in the profession, and so having a board of teaching, I think, is preferable over having a department taking over that role. So I would support having it remain in some form with a board of people that comprised of teaching and active in the profession.
Will this be an item of controversy? Who is in charge?
You know, it is to some degree. In conversations I've had, I think the House is more agreeable to have a board of teaching, whereas there are members of the Senate that feel like the department should take over that role.
Would you explain how the proposed tier system would work? I understand there's going to be a change in levels of licensure, so some people could start, with the first tier with maybe minimal requirements, and then you move up. What's the thinking behind that, and how might that work?
Yeah, this is, again, this is in process, so I can give you my version of it, what I'd like to see. I'd like to see a six-tiered process. The first tier being helping districts that have emergency situations. We do have a teacher shortage in Minnesota, and so often it's difficult to find a teacher, especially in special education areas, mathematics, sciences, and so on. So I think we have to have an emergency tier where we allow teachers or people that are in the industry that have a bachelor's degree, people that are career technical education certified to come into our schools and teach on a temporary basis. But I don't think that we should allow that to be an ongoing process. I think I'd like to see it limited to 2 years. The second tier would be for people that perhaps started in tier 1 and want to really continue that and work towards getting a teacher license. This would also be people in tier 2 and grow your own programs. In Minneapolis-St. Paul area, people that are paraprofessionals, they're encouraged to get a teaching license. They've had experience in the schools. They're enrolled in the teacher preparation program. Tier 3 would be for your traditional four-year graduates that are coming out. They would apply for a 3-year license, and it's renewable upon 3 years. So they're going through a period where they are going to be supervised by peers, administrators, and so on. The fourth tier would be an area for the portfolio, where you could become certified through a portfolio process, or again, you'd be renewing a license after that 3rd year and moving on. And then the fourth year, I should say, too, would be a 5-year license, so a renewable, traditional that we have in Minnesota. And then the 5th tier, I would say, would be for the master teacher. These are nationally board certified teachers that have gone through a rigorous training and vetting process. They have a national certificate. It also would be for our teachers that have the concurrent enrollment endorsement on their license, and they have met Higher Learning Commission standards and certification. Would also be for people that are International Baccalaureate certified teachers. So these are people that are a step above. And then the last one would be for our retired teachers to continue substitute teaching. They would have to have taught 10 years in Minnesota. They were in good standing at the time of their retirement, and they certainly would serve a purpose in our Minnesota schools as experienced teachers coming back on a temporary substitute basis.
So when I hear tiers, in my mind, I think of sort of climbing a ladder, but this isn't really climbing a ladder. It's just sort of which slot you fit into based on your experience. Mm-hmm. So is salary tied at all to any of these tiers?
Well, salary is really dictated by the local school boards through the negotiation process. So I think that would really depend upon them. I would hope that, and they have to a certain degree, recognized that 5th tier, those teachers that have received national board certification. These are people that are very specialized, highly trained. They've gone through additional training, and I know that most school boards recognize and have a salary increment for those people that are nationally board certified. So I would assume that would occur in most school districts.
What is the future of licensure by portfolio? It was a law that was passed in 2008, and then it was recently discontinued Is it currently under review? Because you mentioned it in the tier system.
Yes. I think it's very important, and I authored a bill back in 2015 to reinstate it. It's an important option for people to become certified. And there's certainly people that have the skills, the desire, and I think that they should be able to demonstrate through experience and education so that they could be certified teachers.
You know, I think sometimes there's a romanticized view of teaching. Teachers are passionate about sharing their knowledge and they're passionate about their subject matter. But and that's true, but there's also some real work involved, and the teacher burnout level is high, and we're facing this teacher shortage. What thoughts do you have on how we can help teachers not get burned out?
Yeah. Well, that's a real good question. I think one of the things, especially in special education, is the paperwork that's connected with that. And I know that the legislature has looked at that and continues to look at that. How can we reduce the amount of paperwork that's involved? And then I think empowering teachers too, to make decisions at the local level in their schools, at site councils, be part of the decision-making process, I think is very critical as well.
Senator Clausen, I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
The E12 Education Policy Committee heard testimony on a bill that would provide $35 million in tax credits for donations to fund K-12 scholarships. While proponents of the bill believe it will provide greater access to quality education, opponents express concerns about students' rights and its effect on public education funding.
I don't want to keep going around the world in my business and run into people, and when I say I'm from Minnesota, the next thing, or three sentences in, they go, so what is up with the black kids in Minnesota? Getting asked that question by a superintendent in Alabama, it might be funny, but it was embarrassing. I am embarrassed for us and for our children.
And the majority of our scholars come from within a several-mile radius of our school, which is located in the heart of North Minneapolis. And I say to scholars often, I see them, and when I see them in our halls, I see parts of me. I see parts of my children in them, and it's extremely personal for me, their success. And the opportunity for families to have a choice, to make a conscious choice of where they want their scholar to be and not have finances be the thing that prevents them from doing that is extremely powerful.
It is time to do something different for these kids. To leave them in these schools in Minneapolis and St. Paul that are failing, or anywhere from War Road to Faribault, is criminal. They have not improved at all. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. But this is about opportunity that hasn't existed for these kids for over a decade. To say no is to sentence them to another decade of failure.
Public schools are must accept every student, regardless of what level of education they've had, where they came from, regardless of their special ed disability. Private schools are not held to that same limit. For instance, one school we heard about today, a student who applies to the school has to provide a copy of a 7th and 8th grade report card, a copy of their standardized test scores, 3 letters of evaluation, one from the teacher evaluation 8th grade language arts and 8th grade math. They must have a community leader evaluation completed by a principal, counselor, or employer. They also must have an interview. What that tells me is that private school can say to a student, I'm sorry, you don't meet our qualifications. Public schools do not get to do that.
You know, where are the safeguards for People Fair Dismissal Act? Where are the safeguards for due process for parents? Where's the admission criteria that's there at, right now, if a student shows up in a public school doorstep, you have to take that child. I mean, that's embedded in our being, in our culture in Minnesota.
I am a product of private schools in New Orleans because the public school system, as many of us have seen, is such an abysmal failure. And a big part of that has to do with the way it has been financed over years. There was no property tax. There was no local skin in the game. And it provided an incentive for families to pull their kids of all socioeconomic levels, all academic levels, all types, out of the public school system. And you were left then with schools with families who, for a variety of reasons, didn't feel like they had a choice.
Improving Minnesota's schools and educational opportunities, as well as addressing the state's teacher shortage, are only some of the problems facing our educational system. Minnesota's classrooms are becoming more diverse. Last fall, I had the opportunity to talk with Senator Eric Pratt, now chair of the Senate Education Policy Committee, about diversity in education. Considering the changing demographics, the increase in a diverse population, do you think addressing these problems is best done at the school board level, or the state level, or both?
I think it's both. And what we as a state need to do is figure out from a policy standpoint, what can we do to enable our local boards to enact and really put into place programs that will increase teacher diversity or meet the needs of diverse populations. Because when we talk about diverse populations, they're not the same. Mm-hmm. In my district, I have a large Hispanic and Russian population. In some other districts we have Somali, in some other districts we have your traditional African American populations, and they all have different needs. And so I think trying not to micromanage at the state level, but to allow local boards to meet the needs of their communities is most important.
Some students enter school with language barriers. They come from other cultures. They have to learn English on top of the regular curriculum. Mm-hmm. What kinds of concessions should be made? How should we address getting them up to level without putting them in special education or separating them, keeping them inclusive?
That's a really good question, and it's a very difficult one to take, because even in a small district like Prior Lake Savage, I guess not so small anymore, but when it was small, we were having to address over 70 different languages mm-hmm. of students coming in. And so it's not as if you have a large cohort that you can kind of bring together through one wave, but you're really addressing the individual needs of the students with a teacher that may or may not be able to communicate in that language. Mm-hmm. We've got some terrific nonprofit partners. Down in my area, we have one called the Shakopee Diversity Alliance, which is working with the schools and families to help with that communication barrier, not only just from the language aspect, but from also the cultural aspect. Because when these people come, when we have people moving into our communities from other countries, mm-hmm. The cultures, what they expect from schools, how they push back or advocate for their children is different than it was in their home countries. And so mm-hmm. I appreciate the work that they're doing, and I think we've got to have more of those public nonprofit partnerships.
So that kind of leads to the question about, where is it? Cultural competency. Mm-hmm. With so many different cultures coming together in the classroom, do you think that there should be an increased emphasis among teachers for cultural competency-based training so that they can pull from different types of learning, types of languages, types of cultures, and bring it all together? Do you think that's a positive step?
I think it is positive. I'll take my experience from the business community, where we're doing a lot of training on, for guys my age, how we deal with the younger generation. Mm-hmm. Managing millennials is a whole lot different than managing the Generation X guys that I am. So it doesn't matter how you're what group of people you're talking to. If there's a difference in experience, then you've got to be able to communicate in that way and understand what motivates someone. I mean, that's basic management. That's basic business. Along that line, I also think we have to look at our curriculum and allow school boards the flexibility to, and that's why we put school boards in charge of curriculum, and that's why I've been fighting to have fewer state mandates, because I want kids to see themselves in their curriculum. Mm-hmm. I want it to connect with them. We can have basic American history, but if we can supplement that with, in Minneapolis, let's say it's African American history. If we can supplement that with talking about the struggles of immigrants in past decades or centuries, I think that helps kids link experience and education, and really shows the importance, and it gets them interested enough to continue forward.
So you'd like local school boards to actually be able to shape the curricula a little bit more than maybe is currently the standard? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I think they've got a good, I think local school boards have great breadth in what they can do today. What I don't want to do is tighten that by putting new mandates on them.
Okay. How can the state recognize that family incomes also have an effect in how kids do in school? Kids with lower socioeconomic background tend to not do quite as well as their peers who come from wealthier backgrounds. What can we do about that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, it all starts at the family, and hopefully the family is supporting the children in their education. If the family's not supporting them, we're going to have a hard time getting that child to move forward and really value the education that we're providing them. I think part of it, though, is that we do in fact have failing school districts. And we've got kids who are trapped in these districts and with very few choices. And so I've actually been working on a plan that would allow kids in the lower economic stratuses where their schools are failing, more opportunities to move out, more choices. Because what we find is that it's great to say we have open enrollment and choice, but we don't address the barriers. We don't address transportation. We don't address special needs. All these things that maybe keep a child stuck in a failing school. And so if we can open up some of those opportunities for families to engage and realize that their child can be successful in school, and we can help them remove some of those barriers, then I think we'll see more effective outreach programs and more effective use of our open enrollment.
How important are pre-K programs in terms of getting kids ready for school, do you think?
I think pre-K programs are important. I put both of my children through pre-K programs. I don't think it's for every child. Every child matures at a different rate. But I think it's important, and I think it's important that parents find the right program for their child. If we have a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad, and they work with that child a couple of hours a day, I think that's terrific. If they want to put them in a center for a half a day or a full day, I think that's terrific. If they want to put them in, I've seen Scott County Family Child Care do some terrific things with curriculum as they're getting kids ready for kindergarten in a much more intimate space. And so we need to have those choices. You'd like to leave it up to the parents, though, ultimately? Ultimately, I think it has to be the parent's choice because no child is the same.
Sure. Senator Pratt, we have to stop today, but thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Lurkey, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.